Hello, everyone, and welcome to Grip Locked, Foundation Disc Golf's weekly podcast. I'm Hunter, joined as always by Trevor, and today we've got a little bit of an interesting show. There's not a ton of news out there, but we're getting very close to the end of the offseason.
So close.
Probably the next two episodes are going to be a little bit more featured towards the Pro Tour All-Star event that's coming up, and then the actual start of the Pro Tour, because both of those things are right around the corner now. We're within the month of February, so
finally,
that means that the Pro Tour happens this month.
That's great news.
Yeah, we're almost there.
We've
excited. Almost made it through the offseason. The offseason is always the toughest part because we got to just like create content. There's not content created for us that we can take and reshape and chew up and spit out.
Right.
We got to actually get in the kitchen and cook it up. You know what I mean?
All right.
Calm
the metaphor down. Calm it down.
With that being said, the PDGA did come out today saying that no matter what, as long as they're able to actually like happen in the locations, all majors will happen this year.
Yep.
So even if travel is restricted, basically as long as areas are allowing these events to happen, which there's no reason to believe that won't, because they could run right now, and they could have ran, any time in the last pretty much 8 or 9 months.
Yeah. Majors
are going to happen. Personally, I think this announcement has come too soon. Because I understand USDGC, I understand USWDGC going on. Those are U.S. titles.
Right.
So although they're open to the whole world, it's at least a U.S. champion. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
To where like the title kind of makes sense that like, okay, well the whole world wasn't there, the title's still valid.
Right.
But I don't really like the idea of worlds happening potentially without a full field.
Yeah, it definitely would. I mean, I think it's tough to say. Like, on the MPO side, we are missing out on a couple players, but it's still a highly competitive title. On the FPO side, like, there's a lot of the top players that are stuck overseas right now that maybe would not be able to get there for Worlds. And, like, yeah, that would feel a little bit. I mean, in both cases, I feel like it's going to be a little illegitimate.
Yeah, well, I think
the entire field.
How I look at it is most likely, based on statistics, current play, all of that, most likely the MPO champion is going to be the same MPO champion that we would have if there was a full field or not.
Right.
I don't think MPO is going to change that much. We would like to see some of the up-and-coming talent over here. We would like to see Seppo be able to push for a lead card, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to change who is this year's MPO world champion, whether the full field is there or not.
Yeah.
I do, however, think that the FPO, it could change because we're missing out on Kristen Tatar, who has already won an FPO major in USWDGC.
Yeah.
We're missing out on Evelina Salonen, who is primed to win one. Henna Blomroos, same thing. I think that's the main three.
Yeah, and I don't think you want to have one without the other. I don't think you want to have an MPO and not an FPO. So
no, definitely not.
You can't have everybody. If not everybody can travel, then you just gotta postpone it again.
Yeah, I mean, the World's TD said in an Ultra World article, he said, from my perspective, we've waited long enough and we just have to move forward.
No.
I don't think so because I don't like that reasoning. Again, for USWDGC and USDGC, sure. Because that, at least it just the name of it, it's not Worlds. I don't think you can have a world champion in a world championships if the whole world can't be there.
Well, and my thing, okay, so if they're just desperate to have another major, then just instead, in place of Worlds, go ahead and implement a new major 1 year early.
Yeah.
But you can't have a world champion when the whole world couldn't even get there.
Yeah,
that just is ridiculous.
I don't like that idea. I do want to see Worlds this year.
Yeah.
But I would like to have seen this decision made for Worlds specifically more in like April range.
Yeah.
Or something where we have a good idea of is there going to be like a vaccine? Is there going to be something like a vaccine passport or a work visa that allows people from Europe and stuff over here?
Sure.
If there's an option for players to get over here and players choose not to take it, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If we don't have a European or even a Manabu Japanese or even Australian, New Zealand, if we don't have a non-US presence at Worlds because the players chose not to, I'm completely fine with that. If there is some type of easily accessible way that the sponsor could pay or the player could pay and get here, then sure, let's run it. Let's do it. Because then it's up to the player's choice. But as long as there's no option of the player where they can't be here, then I don't see how we can run a world championship without it.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, it really is the FPO side. MPO, but you can't have one without the other. Another thing that I found interesting from this announcement article was USWDGC is being held in California. Mm-hmm. California has obviously been under a stay-at-home order for a long time. That just recently got lifted, but there are apparently special rules and regulations for professional sporting events that the TD says will allow this event to happen. But almost in that same breath, in the same sentence, Ultiworld pointed out that some of the parks that are being used for U.S. Women's haven't approved the tournament yet. And U.S. Women's is in May. Yeah. So for a major, 3 months out of a major, and to have some of the courses not approved by the Parks and Rec Department yet is kind of interesting, especially for the PDGA to be like, yeah, they're happening. Yeah. Straight up, period.
I think it's interesting that they're banking on trying to get approval based on it being a professional sporting event. I hope that disc golf is legitimate enough to qualify under that, but that's interesting because is that rule based off of the teams playing at the Staples Center? You know, I feel like they made that law based around that, not certainly not disc golf tournaments at public parks.
Yeah, it's going to be up to local government to really recognize disc golf as a professional sport.
Yeah, and it's a whole different game because the other professional sports, if we're talking about basketball and hockey, which are happening right now, they're being played in a private arena. Mm-hmm. It's very much different. Super interesting for them to be that confident. I think it was the TDs that were making this statement. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So obviously they are, wanted to happen so bad that I'm sure they're just speaking with overconfidence on the matter, but I mean, there's no predictability, so I don't know why they would talk with such certainty unless they know something we don't.
I would say the only thing I can think of is maybe some of the courses that aren't approved yet are non-necessities. Maybe
they
we can
have a backup plan, maybe.
Yeah, either have a backup plan or be okay, we'll just run the pro weekend this weekend and AM weekend the next weekend. Or, I don't know. There's no real information as far as what their backup plan is, but I did find it interesting that they threw that into this article too. So majors are happening is what the PDGA is saying, but then there's uncertainty of the rest of the world for the most part, mainly European, traveling here. That's kind of up in the air, and then there's the up in the airness of USWDGC being able to have all the courses. Mm-hmm. So to me, this announcement is too early. I don't really understand why.
There's not really a reason for it.
Yeah, I mean, as a fan, I'm stoked. Cool. We're guaranteed to watch majors this year. That's amazing. Mm-hmm. But I just don't know if that's the right decision for right now. But regardless, speaking of decisions for right now, we have seen something kind of interesting that I think is a bit too soon for the sport. Mm. But we'll let you get your opinions on it too. Basically, we're talking about EV7.
Oh, yeah.
So EV7 is a new company that is focused only on making putters. So the first putter in their lineup is the Penrose and is available for pre-sale right now, both to the general public and to manufacturer, or to retail, excuse me. So first off, before we get into some of the other stuff with this, what are your thoughts on a manufacturer only making one speed of discs, being a putter, even we haven't seen it yet, but a mid or a driver? What's the thought process there?
First of all, what the heck is a Penrose? That's what I want to know. It sounds kind of cool, but I don't know what it is. So if I'm incorrect, the whole thought behind this, Drew Gibson, who's now kind of their cover boy, mm-hmm. Has been a proponent as of late for trying to be sponsored for one type of disc. Now, in my opinion, the reason that is not really a good model for disc golf, number one, even in ball golf, it's very rare that something like that happens. There are a few companies who will let you play with other manufacturers' clubs if they're not really focused on trying to sell that club. Yeah. But it's not very common anymore. And I think what EV7 is they're kind of thinking along the lines of Scottie Cameron, for which of you, if you don't know, Scottie Cameron is a ball golf putter. They're highly regarded as one of the best putters made, but they're owned by Titleist. So they're, even though it may look Titleist players are carrying Scottie Camerons, they have a different putter. They're owned by Titleist.
Were they originally owned by Titleist?
I don't believe so, but they were acquired long ago. So
okay.
And then here's the thing, if EV7's model was like to be so good that they were going to get acquired by somebody. I don't think the disc golf disc is complicated enough. I mean, a ball golf club, it's a stretch to say. I mean, the technology is a little bit different because they can do quite a bit compared to what you can do to a disc. But even there, it's a stretch. And disc golf, it's really a stretch. If you're going to tell me that you've made some kind of mold that is different than the rest, or certainly some kind of plastic, a baseline plastic that feels that much different than the rest, I will be shocked. But the interesting thing we read today is that Drew Gibson is telling us that it's, in his words, weighted differently.
Yeah.
Now those were like, I was kind of like on the whole EV7 thing. I'm like, it's ambitious. I don't think it's going to sell a bunch at the beginning. I don't think it's going to really hold on, in my opinion. But I'm curious to see what happens as just an enthusiast.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking whatever. But then I heard those words, it's weighted differently. And he said, as soon as I picked it up, I could tell the difference right away. Now, he said this after being sponsored by them. So like marketing wise,
he's claiming to have said this, and that's why he got sponsored by them.
But all this is released.
Come out after.
Yeah, all is released now. So like I'm taking it with a grain of salt. But the word choice is like
big claims.
If I pick that thing up and I can't tell the difference between that and a DX AVR, you're in trouble, Drew. Like now my hopes are up. So now I'm very curious. But long story short, I think it's not going to work.
Well, one thing I want to focus on is back to your Scottie Cameron reference, because that's kind of where this whole idea has come from. Who was Scottie Cameron?
He's just a guy who designed putters.
So, like, was he well known before the Scottie Cameron putter became a thing?
Okay, so this is all. I think a lot of this I might be sure on, but I might be talking nonsense. So just
I probably should have asked you that question so you could have it just came to my mind.
I think this is what I know their design. Like it was a designer from California. He designed these putters. Here's what I'm not sure on. He either worked for Titleist already and just kind of like it became a section of Titleist, or he started his own thing. He was acquired by Titleist. In any case, since they've been mainstream, this is kind of the important part. Since they've been mainstream putters, they've been owned by Titleist. So unless you're playing Titleist clubs as a sponsored player, you're not playing Scottie Camerons. So like the whole idea of like Paul McBeth playing Discraft but then using EV7 putters, that doesn't exist. Now in ball golf, you might say, oh, well, like Callaway players use Odyssey putters. Odyssey is owned by Callaway. Mm-hmm. Like, so there are ball golf companies that have flirted with the idea of having a separate brand for like their putter because it's such a special thing, like your putter. But it's owned under the same like roof. Yeah. So like you're not like literally when EV7 was looking to sponsor players, as far as guys that are known, they only really had one option.
Yeah, that's why Gibson. The second this got announced, I immediately texted the group, like our group chat, and I was like, Drew Gibson's gonna get sponsored by them. Yeah. Because that's their only option. You don't have the top tier option for that.
I think it's all marketing hype, and we're gonna get these putters in, and I'm not saying they're gonna be a bad putter. You know, Phil Arthur, the guy running this, he had a big part in Prodigy, and Prodigy makes some really good putters.
Prodigy makes a great putter.
They make some good putters, so I'm not saying it's gonna be a bad putter. It might be a great putter. Even it might win Disc of the Year, but it doesn't change the fact that there's not that much more you can do to a disc as mold wise that's gonna really fascinate me and be like, wow, this is such a game changer. And unless they get acquired by somebody, which would be an interesting move, no top players that are already sponsored by manufacturers are gonna be carrying these putters.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure. I guess maybe they think they can make a killing on the average disc golfer, and they might just do that.
So when I was reading about this, I kind of I'm not concerned, but confused on two primary fronts. The first being the founder and Phil Arthur, right?
Yeah.
He just left Prodigy in 2020, immediately started this, which first off, red flag number one, why on earth would Prodigy not have a non-compete?
Right.
We're tiny, we had a non-compete. You know what I mean?
Ooh, could you imagine if they were secretly?
That's where my mind's at.
Underneath Prodigy,
is the EV7 a branch of Prodigy that they're trying like the Odyssey type thing?
And you know what? It would make sense for a couple reasons. Number one, it looks like a Prodigy putter.
Everything about it.
And number two, the branding, the name, it all seems.
It lines up Prodigy.
Conspiracy.
Second question was: let's say that conspiracy theory is not true, which we have no reason to believe it is. I just have a hard time believing one of the founders of Prodigy and a founding document wouldn't have a non-compete. That just makes no sense to me. Yeah. I just don't understand how that could be a thing. It could be a thing. It just seems like if they didn't have a non-compete, again, I don't understand where they couldn't be.
Well,
regardless, that is complete conspiracy theory. Let's throw that out the window and say that that's not true.
I don't know.
It definitely could be true.
But then I'm thinking, if that is true, then why aren't the other Prodigy players
hyping them up yet?
Maybe their plan is to act like they're just putters, and then like a few months, like somehow work it in that they always were Prodigy or they are joining Prodigy.
I don't even think they would announce they're joining Prodigy. I think you would see Prodigy players start getting signed by EV7.
Yeah,
picking up. Regardless, let's say that I think it's a pretty valid opinion. I think that it's a pretty valid idea, but let's say that that's not true.
Yeah.
Why I was originally concerned with this, or like confused on how they expect it to work, is because of the person designing it, and Phil Arthur, right? Nothing against him as a person. The thing is, though, his name to new disc golfers has no weight.
Yeah.
If you're in the disc golf world, you know about him with Prodigy, you know about a little bit of his history, you know he's got a background.
Yeah.
His name to a new disc golfer, nothing. Right. You know what I mean? If this was Ken Climo, if this was Barry Schultz, if this is Barry Schultz designing a mid, and he's only making a mid, and he's like, this is the mid I always wanted during my, you know what I mean? Then you got a little bit of market, because without Drew Gibson, they have no one to market this.
Yeah. So their whole marketing thing was built off the back that they only make one disc.
But that's what I'm saying is I think without Drew Gibson, there's no hype around this because there's no one to hype it up.
There was still a little bit of hype because
a very small
no
bit.
company has tried doing that.
But what I'm saying is I don't think there's enough hype without Drew Gibson. Even with Drew Gibson, I don't know if there's enough for it to be sustainable. If it was a big name, like if it was a Ken Climo, if this was Paul years from now, if this was Ricky years from now, where they're out of the sport and then they come back and design something,
right? That
holds a little more weight because their name is super relevant because of what they did in their playing career.
Yeah.
He's a world champ, but he's not going to be super recognized as a world champ.
Connor, go ahead and look up Scottie Cameron so we can clear the air on that so we don't sound like idiots.
Regardless, I'm going to move on to Drew Gibson.
Just look up the brand Scottie Cameron putters on like Wikipedia and see like when they were founded and acquired. I'm just curious.
I want to move into the Drew Gibson deal a little bit. So we talked about it some. He's been picked up by them. I think it's interesting from a few different things. First off, his deal it's a 3-year deal with a salary that will increase 30% year over year over those 3 years, and he gets a small royalty on all discs produced by EV7.
That leads me to my next question: who's making their discs? You think about that?
And they look a lot like a Prodigy.
I know.
That's what I'm saying.
Like surely Prodigy's turning those putters out.
To me, I don't know what all went down behind the scene, but the thing that I keep getting hung up on is I just don't understand how he could leave Prodigy in 2020 and within the same year. It says that this was founded in July of 2020. So within the first 6 months of the year.
I looked today and those putters got approved in November of last year. Yeah.
So for this to all kind of happen so fast shortly after he left Prodigy is very confusing to me. And that's why I'm leaning towards it's still a Prodigy
making
thing.
Those putters. And like think about like if you actually had a warehouse just making one mold or even like 3, the amount of volume you could produce, because like you don't have to focus on all these. But
why would you need that amount of volume?
If they were popular enough, obviously.
Regardless, Drew Gibson, 3% salary increase, small royalty, or 30%
That's such a big
increase.
Deal. 3 years.
Yeah. One thing that I find also interesting about it is that Drew Gibson's been very open that putting is like his struggle area. You know what I mean? Like every interview, he'll be able to throw the putter super well, right. But it seems like this is going to be his putting putter of choice. And unless his putting improves this season, the only example people will have it on tour is going to be Drew Gibson, who had 79% Circle 1 and 23% Circle 2 putting last year.
Yeah.
Which was like mid 40th places, Circle 1, and upper 50th places in Circle 2.
Well,
so not stellar in either category right now.
The interesting thing about that, as I thought about it more originally, I was like, well, that's awful business. But then, number one, they only had one choice. We talked about that. Mm-hmm. Number two, I was thinking, it's high risk or high reward because, it's risky because he might stink with your putter. But if he does start putting good, people are like, oh, wow. But then I thought, is it risky? Because he can't really get worse. So if he still is just putting the same, people might not really blame the putter.
Yeah.
So
I don't know.
Did you find anything? What did you find?
In 1992, he started selling them, and then in 1993, Bernard Langer won a Masters tournament using the putter, and so in 1994, Titleist bought him.
So Bernard Lager was like a big deal on tour back then. So a big name won with that putter, and that's how they got acquired. Interesting. I thought that was kind of how it went. So that'd be like Drew Gibson is using these putters, just is lights out, wins worlds, and some companies like there's something special about that mold, we need to have it, and they acquire it. That's basically what would happen, like the disc golf version. And I'm saying like, so surely that's their business model. Like they're trying to like be a putter,
design something so great.
But like, how can you do it? Like, does he know something we don't? Like, I've held so many disc golf putters, and you can change all you want, but I don't think there's something undiscovered out there.
I don't know. Weighted different is very intriguing.
Those words, those words
weighted different. It makes me lean towards like a MVP type disc that doesn't have the actual like gyro on the outside. So like there's more weight in the rim, but like without there being the gyro technology type. I don't know.
Between that and the hydrogen loft putter, we're gonna have our hands full with just weird putters to have to like get our hands on.
It's definitely something that's interesting. And it will be interesting to see if there's still ties to Prodigy somehow.
I mean, we're gonna check these things out. Like we're gonna
get them in. We're gonna throw them. They might be the greatest putter ever, and like that's why
we're not gonna miss out on them.
We might get our hands on them and throw them once and be like, oh, you know what? This company makes a lot of sense because they figured it out. But we also might get it in and be like, this is a PA3. What the heck? So it's definitely going to be an interesting thing. I think that they will for sure be like hyped up and super hot when they first come out. And then the longevity of it is where I'm really got a lot of questions.
Yeah, they'd have to get a lot of diehard fans really quickly. And the putter mold has to also be like, there's a lot of brand loyalty in disc golf. So like, there's a lot of guys that like want to throw one brand. So if they really like this Penrose, they might be like, oh well, whoever I'm throwing. Well, let's say like, Dynamic makes this putter and it's just like it, just about. Like it'd have to be so much different than every other putter. It really would have to be.
Exactly. And Drew Gibson,
I can't wait.
Drew Gibson did say weighted different. He also said it's a masterpiece. It's designed different than a standard putter. You can feel the difference right away. 2 sentences later, he said it fits right in between a P2 and a Challenger. So take from that what you want.
So it may not fly differently.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought that was very interesting.
I like between a P2 and a Challenger.
Keep talking about like how much different it is, yada, yada, yada. And then it's like, yeah, it's right in between these two discs that are super common and every manufacturer has one. Like,
that's what I'm saying. Putters are just straight flying discs.
Yeah,
so.
It's very interesting for me. So we will definitely keep an eye on this and try to figure out what's going on.
I can't get that name out. Like that. Am I the only one that thinks that name is super catchy?
It's a good name.
The Penrose. What is a Penrose? Connor, what's a Penrose? He's on it. Like I have to know. Like surely they're not crazy. What are we finding?
Is there just a definition for it? Or did he make up the word?
He might have made up the word.
Is it how's it spelled?
P-E-N
just like Penrose, yeah.
It's fascinating stuff.
Can you imagine if it's just like
he made it up?
Just made it up.
Made
like
up
how you can't make that stuff up. Although I've seen some disc names out there that are pretty shocking.
What's the thing in Citizen Kane?
That's
you might not know.
No, it's like what he whispers or whatever.
It's just like something famous from Citizen Kane.
Oh shoot!
It has nothing to do with Penrose, I don't think.
No, it has something to do with
Penrose is a town in Colorado.
I mean,
that could be anything.
Maybe that's it.
Maybe that's where he's from.
Maybe. Or you could do a Penrose tile that says any of a finite number of shapes that are components of a specially non-periodic 2 or 3-dimensional tile.
I mean,
that's got to be it. There's something with tiling that makes a lot of sense.
That doesn't even sound like English.
No, but like think it through that. It's weighted different, and we're finding about
Rosemary.
Penrose.
I think that's what he says.
Rosemary, dead on. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Penrose, right? And then we're finding it's weighted differently, and it's about like 2 and 3D tiling is what it's named after. Come on, that's not a coincidence. Maybe it's just in Colorado.
We just look it up like, oh, he's from Colorado. Never mind. That's wild, dude. I'm intrigued by this putter.
I am too. We're definitely.
This is what I've been saying. This that like disc.
Oh, you can check it out, Mr. Dynamic.
I mean, I'm still gonna hold it.
I'll throw it all over you.
I'm not gonna throw it, but I'll still hold it because apparently, if I pick it up,
it can also be named after Sir Roger Penrose, who was a British mathematician and theoretical physicist.
Maybe the Penrose theory or something.
Noted for his investigation of black holes.
Whoa.
I've been saying
This
this
futuristic
that
tech
like
here.
disc marketing needs to shift. Like everybody's marketing is like they're just coming out with new molds. When like I think the future of disc marketing is like technology, whether it be plastic or like we saw with the impacts we released that had those little notches
little
in
cross-hatching,
like stuff like
cross-hatching.
that. Because like there's so many molds that have already been made, but I feel like there's more possibilities with plastic blends and with, I mean, claiming whatever the heck this guy's about to claim about his putter and different weight distribution. Like that's the kind of stuff that like gets you excited, and
Yeah,
it
where
might
you're
be
like-
a hoax. It might be a hoax, but I want to see it.
Everyone's talking about this putter now,
Yeah.
simply because of it. If you look at the plastic and stuff, it looks normal. But
Fascinating.
before we jump into Trevor's
Fire
trivia,
fest
I want to
putter.
super quick talk about the Blue Ridge Disc Golf Tour. We just announced this today. If you're listening to the podcast, technically yesterday, but when we're recording it, we just announced it. We're super excited to be able to bring this. It's basically a mini tour for the Blue Ridge general area. 8 events going to be happening this year, and then an invite only based on points you accrue throughout the 8 events. Invite only, $10,000 added finale. First year of this tour, we're partnering with Blue Chip Technologies. It's looking super promising. The reasons we wanted to bring this to fruition, I'm bringing out all the big words.
Yeah, a crew is really good. I looked at Connor like, did you hear that?
Put my college art degree to test here. Reasons for wanting to create this tour. First and foremost, we wanted to promote the TDs and events in the area that were already killing it, and basically find a way to group them together and make it more sellable, like a more sellable product to raise additional added cash to kind of take that burden off of them, so we could get all the events to a B tier by selling the whole package. And then if they wanted to raise additional added cash, they could do so. So the tour was able to raise enough for all 8 events to be guaranteed a minimum of $1,000 added cash, as well as the $10,000 added finale. And then if the TDs are able to raise that additional $1,000 that they normally get, then now their event has $2,000 added. Mm-hmm. So that was the first and foremost reason, is we thought it was a great way to kind of use our platforms to push these local tournaments and local tours, and local tournaments, and group them together into a tour that we could then sell. We thought that would work really well, and we're super excited to give that. We also wanted to give the players in this area a chance to regularly be on coverage, because that is going to be a big thing for these players. There's a lot of great players in this area. Most of them are sponsored somewhat, a lot of the top ones, but there's also a lot that are up and coming that are just unnoticed by sponsors, and getting them regularly in front of the camera to where you can compare them to some of the other good pros in this area, like a Cody Bradshaw, a Charlie Bearhorst, some of these others, JJ Burns, Justin Rozak, being able to compare these up and coming players to them week in and week out on coverage, and some of the other touring pros that might end up coming in. I'm sure Corey Ellis will probably come down some. I could see Barry Schultz coming up, players like that. Being able to really compare these players, I think that could go big towards helping players' reputation.
Yeah.
And then we also selfishly would like to hopefully someday be able to transition this into a qualification tour of some type, whether that be a USDGC, like the tour winner gets an invite to the USDGC. Maybe it's a mini tour that leads on to getting a Pro Tour card in the future. Who knows what other opportunities may come, but we knew starting this now, when a lot of this qualification stuff is kind of still up in the air and up for grabs, was going to be beneficial, because the more we're able to build it out and the more serious we're going to be taken on the disc golf scene, the more likely we'll be able to offer something like that to a player. And we also wanted it to give a platform where we could take some of the stuff that we talk about here on Grip Lock and really put it to the test, see is this actually going to work. This first year is more of a proof of concept. We're never going to try super crazy things. But, I think as the tour goes on, it'll give us an opportunity to kind of be like, okay, well, let's try this more top-heavy payout. Let's try this, whatever it may be. I'm trying to think through some, maybe like hazards and stuff like that. Let's try some of this stuff. I think this tour is going to be a good outlet for it, where we can kind of work with the TDs, get feedback on the ideas. If the ideas are good and pass the TD test, where the TDs are like, oh, that's a great idea, let's do it. Then we can present it on the tour, get some coverage, get player feedback, and see, like, are we sitting here crazy, or do these ideas actually hold weight?
Right.
And so that's kind of where we were coming from. If you want to find more information about the Blue Ridge Disc Golf Tour, head over to Facebook. We have a Blue Ridge Disc Golf Tour group. It has all the information within it, and we wanted to make it a group so that then the TDs could use it to also post about their events that are within this tour, answer questions, and have like an ongoing back and forth with players, the TDs, and us as the kind of like organizing body. So you can head over there and just search Blue Ridge Disc Golf Tour. It's a public group, and it will come up. But Unless Trevor has something to say about that.
No, I think you covered it.
I made a long list of points to make sure I covered
Yeah.
it all. But it's now time for the fan favorite segment, Trevor's Trivia. What do you got for me today, Trevor?
All right, so we're going to be playing a little taboo or catchphrase or however you're familiar. I mean, similar games there. Basically, the premise of this game, we're going to be kind of on a team here, but
People love when we're on teams.
yeah, I'm going to. I think we'll have Connor control the time. I'm gonna
You
give
want to get a timer?
or you have a timer.
I can get a timer.
All right, never mind. We got Hunter with the timer. We're gonna do. I think
Connor's so disappointed behind the scenes.
we'll do a minute, and I'm gonna try and go through as many disc golfers as I can. I have the
Only a minute.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. A minute's
Let's
pretty
try
short.
2 minutes.
Okay.
Let's do 2 minutes.
I heard the premise of this game before, and I feel like you need to.
I think 2 minutes. So
I don't know how many disc golfers you have.
I'm
but-
gonna go through the Pro Tour standings. I'm not gonna go in order. We'll do MPO. I think we'll do another one for FPO some other time. We're gonna do MPO today. And I'm not gonna go in a particular order, so you can't just track like, well, I know who's in first, second, third.
I don't, but
And I'm not gonna be able to use any like names or manufacturers to describe the player. So it's gonna have to be like other things you would know
stats,
about them.
finishes.
It's probably more gonna be descriptive words.
Okay. How many? Like, is there? It's not a limit on guesses.
And
it's
we're
just
gonna see
can I
how
get
many
through?
we can get through.
All right.
And maybe see if the people that are listening can get them quicker than you.
Yeah.
You know?
All right. You ready?
All right, I'm ready.
And go.
All right. Robot Chicken.
Chris Dickerson.
Anger.
Nico.
Yeah. Long hair.
Chris Clemens.
No.
Greg Barsby.
No. Hair flip.
James Conrad.
Thank goodness.
Oh, jeez.
Okay. Wants to be like another player from the same company, but is young and up and coming. Looks almost just like him. Definitely imitates him.
Anthony Barella.
No. From the same company. Both playing for the same company. One guy just got renewed. The guy he's imitating.
Kyle Klein.
Yes. Tattoos. And,
Drew Gibson.
Yeah. Dates Konopanas.
Grady. No, that's the old one.
Whoa!
Oh, frick. Colton Montgomery.
Yeah.
Crap.
Owns the preserve.
Kayla Visca.
Yeah. Has the same last name as the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback.
Terry Roethlisberger.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of his first name.
Throws that eagle with the Jordan logo on it all over the place.
I've definitely
Forehands
seen
it
the disc.
all over the place. Also, used to throw Scorpiuses all over the place.
Barsby.
Yeah. Has his name on the Buzz SS.
Barham.
That was cheap, but yeah,
Okay.
that was definitely cheap. Made at least $20,000 last year.
All of them.
No, come on, you gotta know what I'm
Emerson
referring
Keith.
to. No, not him. It was on Smash
Oh,
Bros.
Nate Perkins.
Yeah. Come on, that's too funny. Just had a kid.
Emerson Keith.
No.
Grady Shue.
Yeah.
3,
we're out of
2,
time.
1.
All
Okay,
right,
so I
that's
got
pretty
what,
good.
12?
That was a lot.
I do believe.
I thought you were gonna know that made at least $20,000 right away.
I forgot it.
So-
I was trying to think like player contracts you recently heard numbers of, and I was like sales numbers were just going all over the place in my head.
Oh boy.
I mean, you made at least 20,000. That could have been like any of the top.
Yeah, but then we talk about it on the podcast.
Yeah, I forgot about Perkins saying that on Smashbox.
Oh my goodness.
That's pretty funny. That was a good game. I like that.
Yeah, it's
You didn't even use Paul or Ricky.
Yeah, well, no.
You didn't use a lot of them, so we can definitely bring that back.
Because
We got
I wanted
all the FBO field and more MPO.
I didn't want to pick guys like if it's Paul, I could be like owns part of this company.
Brody.
Yeah, well, you got two guesses, you know.
That's all right. That's a fun game. That's a fun game. I looked down and was ready to transition. I didn't know a smooth way to do it.
Where's the segue?
All right. Well, this next segment is going to the moon.
I thought you were gonna say this next segue.
No, we're basically. You
Going
all know
to
about
the moon?
GameStop. You all know about Dogecoin. You know, it's taken over the internet.
AMC.
One thing that about disc golf is none of the companies right now that we know of are public. But we're going to act like they're all publicly traded, and you've got a fat stack of cash to invest in these companies.
Or you already own them.
Or you already hold already hold them, already own them. So we're doing a buy, sell, or hold.
Yes.
So basically, I'm going to give a company. Trevor will give whether he would buy, sell, or hold it, and then why. And this, it might sound similar to the winners or losers of the offseason that we did, but this is based on more so on like the whole company. So now we're factoring in discs, popularity of the discs,
Yeah, you
yada,
also,
yada, yada.
like, you may have lost an offseason, but you're still a company on the rise.
Yeah.
Like there's definitely some examples of that.
So first off, starting off easy, Discraft.
Discraft. This might be one of the toughest ones, I feel like. Discraft.
How so?
Discraft.
I mean, I put him first. I thought it was the most obvious one, but I want to hear.
You think it's obvious buy?
Yeah, but I want to hear your reason for being on the fence.
I would say it's a hold.
Interesting.
I don't think it's a buy because I
Fascinating.
think Discraft has peaked because they have two of the greatest players of all time right now, and if they are not able to secure the next generation, both of those players they have, keep in mind, are like 30 years old. So they still haven't and now there's not really many companies out there that have like the next generation secured. There isn't that many players from that next generation yet. So I'm not saying like they're behind or anything, but I'm not, even though they're on a very much an upwards trend still, like I'm not saying they're plateaued. So I'm saying you hold the stock, you hold it, but I'm not buying it right
Literally
now.
like 5 seconds ago, we're basically saying they plateaued.
I think their climb.
You said
was
they
like,
peaked.
Their climb was
That's
like
exactly what
their
you
climb
said.
was more like this, and now it's like this.
So they haven't peaked.
So it's a slow one. It's not worth the risk of buying right now. You're holding it if
You're
you
crazy.
have it, and you're not quite going to sell it yet. But I wouldn't buy
Okay,
it.
Discraft's an obvious buy if it wasn't already obvious.
No,
They have momentum. They have great molds, hyped up releases out the wazoo like no other company. They have great plastic to go with those. And they have probably the best all-around team because they have Paul, they have Paige, and then you said they don't have the next generation. They just signed Ezra Aderhold, and they re-signed Haley King.
Ezra's okay. Both of those players are not completely proven.
But neither are not proven. There is no
When
reason.
I talk about the next generation, I meant like a guy like Eagle, who already is like a top 5 player, and he's super young.
But you also have to remember
That's what I
that
meant.
Paul and Paige's career have probably 8 to 10 more years.
You have no idea if that's true.
I mean, they could get hurt, sure, but any player could get hurt.
I mean, age is a thing.
Yeah, but 35 playing disc golf?
It's already tightening up more at the top. Maybe not for Paige as much.
Yeah, no.
For Paul, it is.
Discraft's an obvious buy. There's
That being said, he's not coming out
their
of the
momentum
top 3 this year.
Their momentum.
$1,000.
Yeah, if you actually believed that, you would have said they were an obvious buy because that's just going to keep pumping them up. Discraft's an obvious buy, and it's a buy and it's a hold. So you buy it and you're in for the long haul because Discraft's got a lot more up to ride.
I don't know. You never know.
You're crazy. MVP
right this very moment, you buy and then you sell after. There's going to be a point where you sell maybe during this season. Because you're gonna buy him because they just got James Conrad, but I don't think James Conrad. I think he was a good signing for them, but I don't think he's quite good enough to finish high enough consistently throughout the year to keep the MVP hype up enough. Therefore, I think you buy him, you pump and dump this one. You buy it and then you sell it like maybe a few events in when the stock is the highest.
I didn't know we were going to like deep analysts. So personally, I'm writing covered calls on MVP. Like what? There's a buy, hold, or sell. Like there's a one.
Matter of fact, I'm shorting Discraft.
All right, I'm going on Wall Street bets and we're screwing Trevor. Okay, MVP is a buy. To me, it's a no-brainer.
I said it was a buy.
Yeah, but
And
I
then
think
an immediate sell.
they're making we've got their product in. They're making some seriously quality discs, especially
I get
Streamline. Mainly because Streamline doesn't have that same stigma of like being a gyro mold, and they're still in the great plastic that MVP makes. Their plastic feels amazing.
Plastic's good, yeah.
They're definitely on the rise of popularity, and I think that James Conrad is only the tip of the iceberg for them because I think that once James Conrad gets out on tour, it's going to break that stigma. And I think that he's the first of several signings we're going to see over the next few years that are going to keep them on the rise.
Don't think
so. To me, MVP's a buy. If you want to get as technical as Trevor, you wouldn't buy it right now because it probably is inflated from the James Conrad hype. You would have bought it 6 months ago. But
It's true.
I mean, we're not getting that technical. It's buy, sell, or hold.
You never told me whether or not to get
Buy.
technical.
Buy. Buy.
And that's rich.
What
You're
is
the
the
finance
Kramer?
guy.
What's his first name?
Huh?
Kramer.
From Seinfeld?
I mean, I get where that would come off. No, from he's an investing show. It doesn't matter. He like hits a button. It's like buy.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. The one that's like screens.
John
There's
or
always
James.
red in the
Yeah,
face.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, Prodigy.
Ooh, that's a tricky one.
Yeah, it is.
That is the trickiest one.
I changed my answer on this one 3 times. I was writing this.
If you have Prodigy, if you have Prodigy right now and you've had it for a while, do you sell it or do you hold it? Their team is young and decent right now. I think if I have Prodigy right now, I'm selling it.
So you're selling Prodigy.
I'm selling Prodigy.
Why?
Because I think their price right now is as high as it's going to get. Because the last time they signed a team the last time they had a good offseason was when they started and they signed every good player under the sun, and it went downhill from there. And I rest my case.
Yes and no. So I put Prodigy at a
take
hold.
that to the bank.
I put Prodigy at a hold simply because
you could.
Prodigy's had a ton of good talent. Their plastic, it's good, especially their putters and mids, some of the best out there. The reason I have them at hold is because I don't think that they have a ton of needle movers on their team right now. Basically, they have Chris, Kat, and Kevin, who they've already had.
Yeah.
The players they signed are good. They're going to move the needle some, but not enough to really say like Prodigy's got a ton of momentum right now. So I think they're just going to continue on the same pace. If they somehow found a way to make a move with their disc or players to start reaching a new audience, then they could easily flip to a buy. Part of me thinks the answer to this might be kind of in their Spectrum plastic, if they can find a way to produce that more. And also, I don't fully know what's going on with it, but all of my Prodigy discs that I have oil coming out of them, like where they're all like cloudy and they feel like kind of grippy from it, but it also leaves this residue on your hand.
I've never had that happen, and we used to be sponsored by Prodigy.
Maybe it's just like the humidity in my house or something.
It must be.
I've got 65 Prodigy discs at my house, and 58 of them are like that, and the other 7 are PA3s and baseline.
I had a lot of Prodigy plastic.
Connor's nodding his head aggressively.
Really? I had a lot of Prodigy plastic.
It's not their baselines; they're 400.
I know, sitting around my dorm in college because that's what we threw.
Even the Spectrum stuff that we got custom stamped foundation is in the same way.
That's interesting.
But I will say, if you're not like hanging on your wall, and it's not a collector item. It feels great throwing because it's actually like it almost adds like you put your hand in a chalk bag type texture to it.
I almost want to change my answer based on the fact that I think they own EV7 to a buy.
EV7's on this list.
Oh, okay.
I put them here because I figured we could do it. So next up,
for electric.
No, it's actually
Volt
Evolution.
7.
I read it.
Okay, dang. All right, continue.
I think 7's for like 7 days a week, so you're supposed to evolve all the time.
All right.
Innova,
big sell. Because their stock's declining and it's going to keep declining.
Yeah, I agreed. I said sell. I didn't say big sell. Innova's tough. So recent years, we've definitely seen their popularity start to decline. But at the same time, on the flip side of that coin, they're not going anywhere. The Destroyer is not going anywhere.
They're not going anywhere.
The Firebird, it ain't moving anywhere.
Those molds
the
are...
Rock 3, the Aviar.
I feel like the young disc golfers are not throwing Innova like we did when we were
That's why I put it at a sell.
So like 20 years from now, it could be real trouble.
But it just depends if they're able to sign some up-and-comers.
I don't even know if it has to do with signings. They signed Ricky. I think it has to do
Ricky
more...
is not as big of a needle mover. He's not as marketable as some of the other. I would rather have a Kevin Jones, a Paul, even a Chris Dickerson.
Not Kevin. Kevin's not moving the needle more than Ricky.
Maybe not more, but he has more potential to.
Possibly.
I think.
But in any case, I think it has more to do with Innova's like their reaching with like media and stuff. Like,
it's also true.
I'm not feeling their presence there. That's why I would say it. Not necessarily their signing problems.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Innova's still... I'd be surprised if Innova wasn't the biggest... you can't say biggest manufacturer because I think Latitude technically is. But as far as like presence in the sport, I would say Innova is probably still number one. They're not going
anywhere. Yeah.
They're not like going out of business, but I do think that they peaked and they've been on the decline for a little bit.
Yeah.
And I don't think them losing James Conrad and Thomas Gilbert helped their case at all this year. Yeah. So next up we have Discmania.
Discmania is a big sell. Because yes, they have really good needle moving players, but I don't know what's happening to their business with the whole like only making 4 molds things. I'm smelling their business getting absorbed. So that's why I'm selling them.
Yeah.
Because they might not exist anymore.
If there's anything we know about the stock market, 9 times out of 10, it doesn't like uncertainty.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of uncertainty because Discmania,
they're
have
a great
Eagle,
company.
They have Simon.
They've got really
They've
good
got
molds.
insane up-and-coming Finnish players. They have insanely good discs, but they can't make them because they don't make their discs.
Yeah.
So therefore, their originals line, which is by far the best Discmania, like with the most branding, their evolution and active line stuff is great, but is not what the players are throwing.
Innova's smartest play right now would be to buy out Discmania. And I know there's already some kind of relationship there, but they need to just like completely absorb it and have those players under them and absorb the mold.
I think what would be more likely is for Latitude to absorb
I was going to say, I think it'd be more likely that Latitude does, but I think it'd be Innova's best play.
Well, my biggest question is, does Discmania actually own their original line mold? My gut feeling is no, because I have heard so many times that like a PD2 is a destroyer top with a yada yada bottom, and an MD3 is a beadless rock. Every time the original line is mentioned, there's an Innova mold tied into it.
Right.
So my gut feeling is that Discmania can't get those original molds out, because if they could have, I feel like they would have. Because an MD3 or a PD2 in Latitude plastic sounds like a pretty good disc. Mm-hmm. But I think since that move hasn't happened over the last year, it's not going to happen. And so I've seen a lot of Discmaniacs on Facebook and other places. They either are paying some insanely high price for P2s, MD3s, etc., or they're leaving. And like those are your only two options right now.
Yeah.
Because the evolution and active line stuff, it's great.
Mm-hmm.
I felt it. I felt most of it. It feels amazing. But at the end of the day, their players haven't made a name for themselves on those discs. They've made a name for themselves on the originals.
Right.
And that's what everyone wants from Discmania. Mm-hmm. And not being able to provide that makes it a sell for me, because there's too much uncertainty that like Discmania a year from now could be cranking out original lines and be back to pumping, just flying upwards. But this is going to be a very tough year for Discmania.
Yeah.
Because they've announced that basically starting this year off, they're bringing only 5 original line discs in. And we know, I think the MD3 and the DD3 have kind of been announced that those are coming soon. The other 3, I would imagine, is going to be like the P2. I would hope the FD3. And like, what do you choose? Because like the FD, the FD3.
It's tough.
There's so many. MD4, I mean, I don't know what they're going to end up doing, but regardless, everyone's going to want more.
Yeah.
And they can't do it. So that was a easy one for me, but unfortunate at the same time. Dynamic discs.
Oh man, dynamic.
Maybe I should have Connor answer this one instead of you.
Well, okay, I'm gonna
Wearing a
give you.
dynamic hat.
Yeah, I understand that I'm gonna be accused of bias.
Unbiased.
But like, I'm gonna say buy, and you're gonna go, well, duh. But then I'm gonna explain it. The reason I'm.
I don't think it's an obvious buy.
No, I'm saying, well, duh.
Because
Everybody's
you're
assuming
sponsored.
I'm gonna say
Okay.
buy.
Sure.
Here's why I would say it's a buy, and it's because. Number one,
Trevor just played
foot.
footsie on the table.
Number one, it's because their marketing and branding is on point. They have that figured out. They have the whole media side figured out, which is one of the hardest things for some companies. Now that I've gotten my hands on the discs are good. There's no denying like those discs are good. And they're basically like in a spot right now where it's pretty apparent they're trying to make a big signing. So I think it's a matter of time. I think it's just a matter of time before it'll probably be next offseason where they make a big signing. So obviously you buy because it's probably cheap right now, and it's going to explode when they make that big signing. Like there's an inevitable, even if it's not even a huge needle mover, it's inevitable that they're going to go up because they're going to make a signing. Like they're basically sitting there ready for it.
Yeah,
they're not going to go down. That's the other reason it's an obvious buy. They're not going anywhere. They have a solid team.
That's what I put them as a buy, simply because they're doing well and doing just fine without that face of the company player.
Right.
To where a lot of other companies are relying on that face of the company, that one singular player. That's why I put Dynamic as a loss this offseason. But I think that as a company, I'm more confident in the future of their company than a lot of other ones, because a player's contract can come and go just like that. And, as quickly as some players come to companies, they can leave immediately, and that will really hurt. Dynamic, they're being able to build this brand around employees, around, their podcast shows, stuff like that, where there's a lot of interchangeable parts. And if you lose just one person off that team, like Robert McCall, who they just recently lost moving closer to his family, it hurts, but it's not crippling.
Right.
Because Robert McCall is not the face of the company. Mm-hmm. There's no one singular face of that company. So to me, that allows them, because they even talked about last year as one of their best years, or maybe it was the year before that. They're moving into this massive new warehouse. They're clearly doing very well as a company without that player. So once they get that player, that strong foundation they've built isn't going anywhere. That strong foundation they built, that's not going anywhere. Yeah. So I think that, like you said, their only direction's up. They hinted it several times that they made big offers this offseason to multiple players. I think they wanted every free agent that was out there. For some reason, they weren't able to land any of them, but they're going to land one soon. And once they do land that person, then Dynamic's going to be, a force to be reckoned with. Sure. So these next two, I think we can kind of go through quick. You want me to group them together? You know what's coming. West Side and Latitude.
Yeah, West Side and Latitude are both a hold.
Yeah, that's what I put the same thing.
Because
they both have solid molds that are keeping them around.
Yeah.
They both have a solid team that's keeping them around, but they're not making a big move one direction or the other. They're just kind of there.
Yeah, they're holds.
All right, the final one, EV7, and I think that my answer might surprise you.
Sounds like a YouTube thumbnail. His answer
Click to find out.
Yeah. EV7, okay, the hype, well, if you already have it, you're definitely holding it because the hype is still building right now. Their hype cannot die on EV7 until something would get leaked, which is unpredictable, or when the season starts and these things get in people's hands. So if you have it, you're holding it. If you don't have it right now, I'm still buying it. I think the hype's going to keep building at this point. It's still, maybe until this podcast comes out and we keep talking about it. But you're buying it for sure. So it's a buy and sell. It's a quick one, though.
So I listed it as a sell because I was looking at this as more like a long-term investment type thing. So I actually literally wrote this. If it was an actual stock, I'd invest hard right now, ride the pre-sale, and then dump it as fast as I can.
Yeah, it's exactly right.
I don't think there's a room. We talked about this some. I just don't think there's room for a putter-only brand right now. I think it's too early unless it was designed by a super well-known and already marketable player. Like I had said, Ken Climo, Barry Schultz, something like that. So you're not going to be able to find pros that push the plastic. I think long-term, unless it is tied to a prodigy or it gets bought out by a different company, I just don't see it making sense. So to me, this is, we're quick flipping this. We're getting in and out fast. But if we're going long-term, it's a sell.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, before we jump in to make that call, this was actually requested by several people that I think here on YouTube, people were a little left in the dark because we made a lot of posts over on Instagram about this stuff. So we wanted to clear this up really fast. First off, Trevor's deal with dynamic discs.
Yes.
You don't have to go into details about your actual deal. Right. I think what people were more confused about is why you chose to sign with them. And also, does this mean you're going to be, trying to tour type of a thing?
Right. Yeah, so first of all, the reason I decided to sign with them is because now that Foundation is carrying other manufacturers, I wanted to throw other discs to promote them, but I figured, there might be an opportunity for me to work with the company to, have those discs provided to me so that I could, it's kind of a win-win, helps me out, getting some discs in that are given to me that I can use, and then helps the company out because I can use my platform to promote them. So I figured I would go with Dynamic because I am a fan of their company. I had a contact within their company, and I can throw three brands essentially. It's kind of killing three birds with one stone. Obviously, I'm going to throw primarily Dynamic, but you're allowed to throw West Side and Latitude as well. As far as the deal, it's just a basic ambassador deal. I'm not being sponsored for my playing ability. I mean, most of you can sniff that one out, and then others seem confused, like, how did this guy get sponsored? I mean, if you look through their ambassadors on their website, it's a lot of tournament directors and people that are just growing the sport and promoting their plastic. And that's all I'm being signed to do, really, is just throw their stuff, talk about it, and just use it and spread the word about dynamic discs. And so that's all it is.
Yeah.
It's nothing major, nothing huge, and I'm not going to be touring, but we're just trying to help each other out.
The other big question was right along the lines of it was, what the heck does this mean for the future Foundation? We saw a lot of questions about there go Paul and Brody. They're gone off the scene, yada, yada, yada. Foundation is not changing. Paul and Brody are still here. They're still going to be, actually, Brody's literally coming up in 2 days from now. We're going to be getting some content with all four of us, hopefully again. assuming that Paul's super busy right now prepping for going out to the all-star events and stuff like that. So he, I think, only has like one true day that he can kind of practice and stuff like that. We might have to do meetings that day instead of actually film. Regardless, there's going to be content. Brody's going to be up here. All 4 of us are still together. You know, that rumor can be thrown out the window. We are also transitioning to carrying all brands. I think that this doesn't really come as a shock to a lot of people because you saw the post on Instagram, if you follow us on Instagram, where all Brody and Paul exclusive stuff is going to be transitioning only to Discraft. And, you know, that move basically allowed Foundation again to be separated to where we can now carry stuff. Basically, Discraft, and it made perfect sense, didn't want Paul and Brody exclusive stuff being sold on a website that carried all brands. And then, you know, when Rubber Met the Road, it was just a discussion back and forth of it would literally... People thought that I was like making something up. I was not lying. We got customer service emails and calls about the Get Freaky drops, and Discraft got customer service emails and calls about our McBeast and other drops, and it was very confusing to the customer. Every time Brody would post something about a drop, some of the first comments were, "Is this on Foundation's website or Discraft's website?" And that's not good for either of us. So after talking more and more, it just made sense to make that transition, and then that transition opened the door for us to be able to start carrying other brands again. As far as our custom runs and stuff, the same amount are going to be happening. The patrons are going to get the same benefits that were promised. Nothing's changing there. The only change is the stamp designs are going to be Foundation heavy over Brody and Paul heavy, and not even all of them were planned on being Brody or Paul heavy. Very few were. So day-to-day operation, your experience as a customer, nothing's changing. You know, it's really just a transition for us as a company. It's a lot more behind the scenes type stuff, but we obviously, with how public we are and how open we are with all of our, you know, business stuff with you guys, it obviously raised a lot of questions, and hopefully that clears everything up. A lot of people on Instagram that already cleared up. So if you're not following us on other platforms, sometimes something like that will happen where you'll be confused, and it's simply because we thought it was more of an Instagram announcement than a YouTube announcement. But if you listen to this podcast, hopefully that makes sense now. And it's finally time to transition into the last segment of the day, Make That Call. All right. Now, I need to start this off. Emergency press conference here. I need to apologize for last week because, well, possibly. I also need to correct myself, possibly. So the Q&A section of last week's rule, if you don't remember, basically it was the throw. Trevor, as he was pulling through, a branch knocks it out of his hand, falls down, didn't count. The Q&A section, when compared to the actual rule for what defines a throw, is pretty confusing. So the Q&A section on the PGA's website defines a throw as a throw begins when the disc is moving forward in the intended direction, meaning that my rule call last week was wrong and Trevor was right, because the disc would be moving forward before it got knocked out, and therefore not a throw, or was a throw, because you're moving it forward in its intended direction. But the actual rule states, and it's way more vague about, a throw is the propulsion and release of a disc in order to change its position. That's the definition of a throw. And then the throw rule for whether it counts or not says each throw that is made as a competitive attempt to change the lie is counted.
Right. So to me, the rule is saying if the disc, if all that needs to happen is the disc needs to be propelled and released, even if you're moving it backwards in a reach back, it's still being propelled. And then even if the tree is what releases it, it still was released.
See, what hinders me is the competitive attempt to change the lie.
You were making an attempt. The branch
what if it was my practice swing?
That's where it becomes too ambiguous. Like, unless you're in disc golf, like in ball golf, you can be standing 5 feet away and take a practice swing. In disc golf,
you got to be on your lie.
You got to be on your lie for it really to make sense for you. And in that case, like, unless you're going to yell it, "This is my practice swing," like, you're going to have to just accept the consequences if that disc pops out of your hand. It's a throw, you know? So
yeah, regardless,
that's where
I think that, so last week, according to the Q&A section, if it would have been his reach back that knocked the disc out, it wouldn't have been a throw. But then as Trevor states, it's the throw, the propulsion and release of the disc in order to change positions. So, like, would your reach back not be a propulsion of the disc?
It sure is.
I don't know. Regardless, we're moving away from that. We're just going to say last week I was wrong and you were right, that it was a throw, because of the way I worded it last week. But this week,
thank you.
This week I did my research both between the Q&A section and the rules section to make sure I had both fronts covered, because last week I skipped the Q&A explanation and went straight to the rules, and I should not have done that.
Dirty dog.
And now we learned. So this week, you step up to a somewhat soft par 4. Has a double mando, though, up about 60 feet shy of the green. You step up and you're like, you know what? I'm feeling good. I'm going to go for it. I'm going for it.
That seems impossible.
Straight out of your hand, it looks amazing. Everybody knows it's making the Mando.
Everybody knows it's in.
Out of nowhere, this crosswind picks up and it hyzers out just early, and you end up missing the Mando. As you start walking with your group, you're already upset. You get up there.
I'm not even mad. I'm getting up and down for par.
You get up there
60 feet away.
But there's no drop zone marked.
Oh, now I'm upset.
So there's no drop zone marked.
Now I'm real upset.
Where are you playing your next lie from? And what are you throwing from that lie?
Okay. So I think the obvious answer here was just to be like, oh, you just re-tee and you're throwing 3. But you wouldn't have given me the question if it was that obvious. So therefore, I feel like there's going to be some rule where it's like wherever you break the Mando line or something. I've never heard of this, though. Because there's always seems to... I feel like there's always either been a drop zone or you re-tee. But you wouldn't have given me the question if it was that easy. I'm gonna go ahead and say that you play from the line of the OB like straight across, and I'm gonna say you're allowed to take a meter relief off of that line, and you're playing 3.
So where you cross the Mando line.
Yeah.
No, you just re-tee.
All right. So I knew the rule, but I just overcomplicated
you're on the tee throwing 3.
That's funny.
Because if no drop zone had been marked, you must proceed back to the previous line.
You just try to reverse
in my head always thought the rule for a Mando that a drop zone had to be present.
Oh, I know. I'm pretty sure I played events where you re-tee. That's why I thought that. But then I was like, no, wait.
I was just like sitting there and I was like, that's fascinating. I always thought like every time I've made a Mando, I put a drop zone.
Yeah, no, I think I'm pretty sure I've played courses where you retweet.
Retweet.
Yes.
I've always, I don't know. I just thought a drop zone was like a mandatory thing. That wasn't supposed to be a pun.
It's like a double pun. All right, continue.
That was all I was saying. So that's why it still stumped you. So it worked. I played reverse psychology on myself and got it. All right, well, that's going to wrap it up for this week. Hopefully this podcast was at least fun to listen to and also cleared the air on a lot of random stuff. And also, we got a little speculation conspiracy theory going there with EV7. We'll keep you filled in on that because that could just be fascinating. Who knows? But that's going to wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we will talk to you all next week.